Hello again. Welcome back inside the Tier 4 studio in Morgantown, West Virginia. I am still Mike Casaza. We are nearing the end of summer, which of course means we are nearing the start of the football season. And really and truly, things begin at West Virginia University tomorrow with the start of preseason practice. It all begins at 5 o'clock. They let the media in for about half an hour, and then Dana Holgerson will have a brief news conference around 7:15. I'm sure it's going to be about absolutely nothing. Lots of questions and not many answers because it's the first day, a long, long way from even when things begin to take shape, let alone when the team takes the field. A lot will happen between now and then, offense, defense, special teams, all three sides of the ball. I don't have to tell you that, but it was interesting to be over there today. The reason for my delay was I had a previously planned appointment with Holgerson that just never really came to fruition until today, and kind of a last minute thing, he wedged me in and we talked about a bunch of different things for different stories I was working on, but seems refreshed, excited, and told me he feels better about the situation he's going into right now than he did the first 2 years, which if you think about it, maybe that sounds obvious, but those were two pretty good seasons that he entered into. Obviously last year, the momentum coming off the Orange Bowl and all the cards he held in offense, you had to feel pretty good about that. And oh, by the way, you're going into the Big 12. And just think of the excitement of being a first-time head coach with, again, pretty good players in 2011, and that ended up in the Orange Bowl. So I think he had to feel good about both those seasons, but he feels best of the three about this. Will that be as redeeming of feeling so many weeks from now when you're in the 12th game of the regular season? Who knows, but that's why we watch, why we write, and why we'll be paying attention beginning tomorrow. Dana would not say many other things significant that might interest you today on the eve of the start of football. Did not really say anything about the roster and who is not going to be here and why, or who is here. Said he would address that tomorrow before he starts his press conferences to get rid of those questions. He knows as well as anybody that people like me and others will be out there crossing off names on lists. I can tell you that Mario Alford and Dontrell Hyman are indeed enrolled, ready to go on the team roster. They will be there tomorrow. Not yet sure where things stand, just as the case was yesterday with Darian Howard, with Brandon Golson, and with Isaac McDonald. Maybe a wait-and-see thing with them. They may make it, they may not, who knows, but we'll probably learn more about them tomorrow. Maybe good news, maybe bad news, but it'll at least be news, which I can't give you right now. One more other thing about just the trip over to the Pushkar Center that was kind of interesting to me was, I know it's the day before things start. You're going to have a lot of people over there, but there was a constant flow of people in the lobby in the Pushkar Center. And if you've never been in there before, there's the main desk, and Holgerson's office is behind that desk, behind a wall and a door and a room all by himself. But on the other side, you have the coaches on different wings of the room, and you never really see a lot of interaction between them when you're in there during the week. It was kind of funny today. Dana and I went on a tour just around the facility just to show me some things that he's done, that he's raised money for, that they're going to introduce and use this season, whether it's bells and whistles like murals, Xboxes, televisions, the weight room, meeting space, functional stuff for day-to-day purposes. But as he was walking around just showing me that stuff, showing off frankly, a lot of interaction between players and coaches, whether it's a head coach to the assistant coach, a head coach to the player. They all knew each other's name. They were all happy to see each other. Everything was conversational. Hey, how you doing? How was your trip to Glade Spring? How's your knee? Are you ready to go? Hey, coach will be out in the field, stuff like that. Struck me as odd. You really didn't see a lot of that interaction before in the Pushkar Center. For various reasons, I think we can probably fill in the blanks there, but maybe, again, it's just the excitement for the start of the season, or maybe there's a good feeling about this, as Dana kind of hinted to before. He feels really good about this, and maybe that's just a manifestation of that exuberance. So questions from the blog that you gave me, I kind of cobbled them together. Many of them overlapped. I'll try to touch on them now just to wrap this up here quickly today. One, obviously, was the scholarship situation and where things are now and why it was so bad. I think maybe a myth about Bill Stewart's recruiting was that he undersigned. I think that might have been maybe a clever and convenient explanation. The truth is they just didn't get a lot of the guys they wanted sometimes. They got beat out. Other guys just didn't make it. They competed for recruits that other schools competed with, but they didn't get all of them. And sometimes they just couldn't fill out recruiting classes like they wanted. But remember 2 years ago, they were about 68, 69 to start Holgerson's first season. This year, they're right under 85, so that's a good number right now. They're filling that up, and truth be told, their next two classes are going to be kind of small because they've been so large the past couple of seasons. So that's good, getting better. It's never where you want it to be, I guess, because you're going to lose people naturally, and maybe not everybody's going to enroll in a recruiting class, but it is getting better around here. Other questions. Now that Tavon's gone, who is the fastest guy on the team? I don't have an answer for that because I haven't seen some of these guys, but I am very interested because there are some guys I know who are quick on offense. Jackie Marcellus and Mario Alford are two names that have come out a couple of times, and I've heard Wendell Smallwood is a pretty fast running back. I'd be very interested to watch these guys go and see who can get it from yard marker to yard marker the quickest. And probably something I'll update in the future. I'm sure I'll ask some people who they think is the fastest, but I like the way you're thinking. We're on the same page there. Everything that we've heard about Ford Childress, his potential, his physical tools, what is holding him back? Again, another good question. I think it's really out of his control. Time. Didn't really get a lot of chance to practice last year. Once the season starts, it was clear he was going to redshirt. Remember, that was a stated goal at the start of the season. They wanted him to redshirt, and they wanted to let Gino play, of course, and then use Millard and give Ford a year to develop and then 4 years to play. I think playing time is just it, and he did okay in the spring, but that was really his first foray into practicing with a wealth of snaps. I'd be curious to see how quickly he does or does not develop now, because really nothing should be new to him at this point. Third one, first down, first game. Who is your starting running back? I would say Charles Sims. Now, you hedge in your question. You say, if not Charles Sims, where does he go? I think it's going to be him. I know that Dana Holgerson is going to play Charles Sims a wide receiver, and I'm going to write a little bit about that for tomorrow's paper, but it's part of a new thing they're going to do on offense this year, and they're going to play people at different positions. You're going to see slot receivers at running back. You're going to see running backs at wide receiver. You're going to see tight end, fullback, slot receiver all in one. But I think Sims is going to be your running back for most of the time, but he will catch passes and he'll line up outside because, one, he can, and two, it's really going to confuse the defense if it gets going like that. Next question. What are the odds that a running back transfers? Really good question. Obviously, we know that Shell from Pitt has transferred to West Virginia. I'm not going to take a shot at his first name until I have him tell me how to pronounce it. I've heard it too many different ways. So now we'll call him Shell. He's transferred to West Virginia, and you're going to have, in their senior years next season, when Shell is eligible, you'll have Andrew Bowie and Dustin Garrison. Don't forget Smallwood is also around. I don't think we know quite yet what Marcellus is going to do. I believe he's going to be a slot receiver who maybe moonlights a little bit of running back. I'm not sure if he's a permanent running back. But the only candidates to transfer really would be Garrison and Bowie, and I don't see them doing that for their senior seasons or before their senior seasons. I think that they realize they have a good situation here. By the way, I've also left out Jamius Smith from that list. He's in that group, but he's a junior college transfer. He's a junior. He's not going anywhere either. Really, the only candidate to transfer, and this is by process of elimination, which is very unfair, would be Smallwood, and I just don't know enough about him or his situation yet to say he's going to transfer. I think he'd be smart maybe to hang around and see what happens. Perhaps he redshirts this year. I'm not sure there's a need for him, but if he can play, he'll play, and if he can play, why would he transfer? Maybe too early to say on that one, but again, good question. Depth at running back is a convenience they haven't had necessarily before, but with a convenience, sometimes you have some conflict. What are the odds that Kevin White starts a wide receiver? 1 to 1. I think that he's the only guy who has stood out so far there. The other side to have some questions is Ivan McCartney, is it KJ Myers? I don't know, but throughout the spring, I was really impressed with Kevin White. I think everybody else was too. I'd be stunned if he's healthy and doesn't get any type of trouble, but if everything goes according to his plans, as I'm sure they are in his head, he would be one of the outside receivers. About Ivan McCartney, is there a reason to believe in him, and what will he do in his final season? Don't know. You have to like that there was at least a mutual reconciliation there. I don't think Dana would go back and ask for people. I don't think anybody on the offensive staff would do that, let alone a guy who's maybe flaked out a little bit like McCartney has. But boy, is he talented. You've seen it before, and if he can get his head right, he's going to play well. And maybe the way that he came back to the team, maybe that's an indication that his head is right. And if so, that solves your receiver problem on the other side of the field, and it gives you a guy who, in a small window, I know that. He's proven it, though. He really can play. And if he can get going, he can stay down and really not cause himself or his team any trouble. That could be a really nice story for West Virginia. Next question. Any reason this year to believe in Squirt? Squirt would be Jordan Thompson, the slot receiver. Came in spring of 2012 and lit it up, was the talk of the team, and did very little, frankly, his freshman year. Again, lit it up at this spring, but was held away from the media, kind of in a doghouse situation. Who knows? You'd like to believe the potential becomes reality soon, but I'll answer your question like this. If you don't have a reason to believe in him after this season, I don't think you'd be asking this question this time next year. Moving on, Shelton Gibson, contributor or not as a freshman? I think yes. He and Mario Alford are probably going to make some moves on the depth chart quickly. An inside receiver. I know they have plans to use him and Alford and maybe even Marcellus as a running back at times. It'd be interesting to see how they juggle those three, because you have two spots. You figure Cody Clay is going to get one of them. They really do like Connor Arleo. Where do you put Will Johnson as kind of a tight end figure in the slot? I don't know, but the competition among those three, Alford, Gibson, and Marcellus, will be pretty interesting to follow. But I think Gibson's a talented guy, really one of their best recruits, has a chance to play this season. The freshman or the transfer we're not paying enough attention to? Great question. We really kind of paid attention to the big names, especially the ones that were here in the spring. I would give you 3 names, and they're transfers and freshmen. But transfer receiver Ronald Carswell, played at Alabama. I guess signed to play at Alabama. Was a junior college star last year. I think he's going to be a pretty good player. Marcellus, I've mentioned a bunch. That's probably an indication that there is a little bit of buzz about him and how they can use him, where he can play. Is he a special teams guy? I don't know. And Darryl Worley, a safety. They don't have a lot of depth at safety. Apparently this is a big kid, a hitter who can run and make plays. I think he's going to have every chance to fill in some depth there. Moving on. Defense, threat or menace? Really good question. I don't know the answer to that one yet. I think that they're going to try to be a threat and they don't want to be a menace, but I think the hope is that there's so much continuity from last year's roster to this year's roster, and I think maybe Keith Patterson wrapped some skill of his players around the scheme of his defense, so maybe one knows what the other is doing and it kind of works in a better harmony than last year, where they were just having guys do stuff that frankly they weren't good enough to do at that point. But a little bit of maturation on the defense, maybe the coaching staff as well, more familiarity with one another on that side of the ball. Has to be better, maybe more threatening, probably not as much of a menace. Where we end up on either side of the argument, too early to tell. Also, again about the defense, is this a 3-4/4-3? Will it take one form or the other? This is going to be a multiple defense. They're going to be a 3-4 and drop a linebacker to the defensive end. They're going to show the defensive linebacker and have him drop back in coverage. It's going to depend on the other team's personnel as much. I know that the hybrid defenses aren't necessarily popular to fans because it's hard to identify, but that does seem to be the way to go as far as matching up with offenses, especially in the Big 12, that play tempo and make it hard for you to substitute. Freshmen who will start, play, or have significant roles. I don't know. One thing, and this is probably more so on defense when you think about it, you figure the defense could use an influx of talent and arrivals and maybe help them out. I think you're going to see that probably at the defensive end outside linebacker position with Devontae Henry and Dontrell Hyman. I mentioned Worley. I'm not sure how many other spots there are because there is a lot of depth. I'm sure they'll have a chance. I think a guy like Al-Rashid Benton could have a shot to play. Malik Reeves was pretty good in the preseason, the spring. Hodari Christian was, and, there's some guys back there that I think have a chance. Marvin Gross is another defensive end who can put his hand on the ground, maybe play outside linebacker. They'll have a chance. Who knows? It's a guess right now. Offense, I think it's a little easier because there's so many vacancies. You can name guys like Marcellus. I mentioned Smallwood. I think he's good enough perhaps, and he showed some flashes, especially in the spring game. They have a lot of guys at running back. Offensive line, maybe. A guy like Tyler Tizeno, I've heard some nice things about, but can he do it? Can he get himself together in time? Guessing game at this point right now, but the receiver positions with Gibson, Marcellus on the outside, probably just junior college guys, and maybe McCartney and KJ Myers. I'm not sure out there who has a chance, but again, this is what these first couple of weeks are about. Finally, any chance that you see a 2-quarterback system? I think it'll be an accident. I think maybe someone gets their bell rung and just doesn't get off the field. Maybe they have a face mask and the strap on sideways, and they get their wits knocked out of them. They don't know where they're going. I don't think you're going to see anything tricky like that. But wouldn't that be something? If you don't have one, you have two and you play them both. But realistically, they're just going to play one. They're not going to get in a platoon situation where you rotate from series to series or quarter to quarter, which makes, these first 2 weeks really interesting, how they go from 3 to 2 to 1 and who stays and who goes. But things like that to keep your eye on. It all begins tomorrow. Thank you for joining me. Good to see you again. I hope it was good to see me. I will catch you tomorrow.